All right, so I actually heard earlier someone say that they saw this the day of reminder on social media. How many of you are here tonight because you got a phone call about the meeting? Awesome. It works, Christy. How many because you're on our email list? Right. And how many from social media? All right, wonderful. Okay.
Street signs.
Street signs.
Yes.
How about the street signs? Okay, lovely. Thank you. We tried all of the different ways to reach people. How about you?
They call me.
Okay, the call. Okay, perfect. Wonderful. Great. So thank you all for joining us from all the variety of ways that you hear about this meeting. Just want to make sure y'all can see everything okay. I wasn't thinking about the light background here. Okay, so this is an overview here of the waste pits. And this is what is defined as the area of interest for the site for the EPA. Now, there are 3 primary areas, 2 of which are highlighted within this. One in red, here, that's the northern waste pit. Might be blocking out for some folks. And then this one here in yellow is the southern waste pit. And then right over here is the other area you're gonna hear mentioned today. That's the sand separation area. So we will be talking primarily about the sand separation area and that northern impoundment in red. Okay, to lead up to the big 2 milestones that we're going to talk about today, I wanted to just quickly go over the items in recent history that many of us have been following. In 2025, the responsible parties for the waste pits submitted their 3rd attempt at designing the plan on how they were going to clean this site up. And then in September of last year, the EPA notified them that they were going to accept the plan, but with very specific conditions. In October, the responsible parties' attorneys sent the EPA a letter arguing a very specific point. And the very specific point was pushing back on one of those conditions that the agency outlined. And that was that the companies had to sample after they remove all of the waste material, and that they had to do it by a point-by-point analysis. And the companies were really wanting to average the material if they were to sample. And first of all, if you don't sample, and then second of all, if you average your samples, how do you know if you removed all of the waste you were supposed to? You don't. And so in order to have certainty in the cleanup, you have to sample and make sure that you've got what you set out to get. In April of this year, the EPA issued an explanation of significant differences. And this is not something that happens in every Superfund process. We actually created our own little Superfund snake graphic. So we often refer to this and have a couple of varieties that we use from the EPA and other PowerPoints and things we've found over the years. So our team member Victoria created one of our own. So this outlines the major processes in the Superfund process. They're at the sign-in table. And on the back, we have some of the ways that we define these milestones in the process. So the EPA issued an explanation of significant differences. We're going to get into that a little bit more in detail. But it was essentially an update to a couple of the details in the 2017 Record of Decision. That was the decision after Hurricane Harvey where the EPA said enough is enough. We're deciding on how to move forward at this site, and it is to fully remove that northern waste pit, isolate it with a cofferdam, and remove that waste material. And then, about a week later, in April of this year, the EPA issued a unilateral administrative order. This is a federal directive for the companies responsible to actually start the cleanup process. This is the decision that moved the Superfund site to that next phase in cleanup, which is remedial action here in number 4. So one component of that is so significant is that it is moving it through the Superfund process. It's a massive regulatory milestone, but also a big milestone for everyone and everything involved in this process, and that we're seeking to protect, because it's finally the phase of this long and arduous process where actual construction will take place. So you can't see this too well, but this right here is in the explanation of significant differences. And that is the budget, and explaining and outlining the difference in cost from 2017, when that decision was made for the cleanup, to 2025, when the remedial design was completed, so to speak. When it was approved, I'll say when it was approved in 2025. So in 2017, it was estimated that the northern impoundments removal would cost around $100 million. And now, with the increase in construction, as well as some significant changes in the actual design and additional protective measures, it's estimated to cost around $260 million to complete this cleanup. Now, if you go and you look at the explanation of significant differences, you will see there are 2 additional columns on this side. And one of them actually brings this total project cost over $300 million. But the range outlined by the EPA in what I'm going to refer to as the ESD, this explanation of significant differences, is around the $260 million marker. Another significant difference that was outlined in this was that at the southern site there was much more waste material removed than they expected. So it was actually about 175% more waste volume removed than they expected when they signed that decision back in 2017. And so this is one of those, formalities for the record, so to speak, with that regard. Another thing that was in the ESD was the EPA once again affirming they will not allow the surface weighted averages, or the SWAC as they call it, the surface weighted averages for sampling. You are not to average the waste, and you are to sample it and do individual analysis. Okay, so now for the unilateral administrative order. A lot of technical and regulatory stuff tonight, a little unusual for our meetings. I did, before I get into this, I will point out that I grabbed some of the language from the ESD and put it here for y'all on the agenda, so you would have those figures. I know particularly our people who come from industry, who come from construction, are interested in cost, project management, all of those things. So I put a little bit of detail there for you all. So the unilateral administrative order is one of 3 options that the EPA had to try to move this site towards an actual cleanup. It is one of the strongest regulatory tools that the agency has. Essentially, it's a federal directive that compels the responsible parties, International Paper and Waste Management's subsidiary, McGuinness, it compels them to actually clean the site up. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what's next, penalties, and all of those details. But for us, this was a huge milestone and a huge win for the communities. So much of what you all have weighed in on over the years was in that administrative order. We went back and we compared the guidelines for the EPA and other, and I'm going to refer to it as a UAO probably. So if you hear me say order or UAO, this is what I'm talking about. We compared to see, you know, did the EPA concede to the responsible parties on certain things? Did they just kind of take the middle of the road, go with the, you know, basic recommendations, or did they actually take a couple of steps ahead? And compared to the guidelines for UAOs, they took several steps ahead. And so community engagement and community involvement was one of them. EPA oversight, there were several areas, skip ahead because that's where I'm going, but there were several areas that they really went above and beyond the recommendations. And each of those areas, just about every one of you in this room and many, many more have commented on over the years. And so I know this process is long and it's frustrating, and especially, you know, for the community members who pass that site every day, the community members that struggle with their health, it's frustrating. But we are making progress, and so it is really a testament to people power, to our voices, to the elected officials who stood with us. Yeah, so thank you all. And I will note Roger's here from Commissioner Tom Ramsey's office, and he has been a tremendous ally. We have pollution control here as well. You know, so many folks for a lot of years have rallied around this cleanup. So some of the things that, you know, have to go into this process are, you know, the companies have to show the EPA, and all of this is outlined in the federal order. They have to show that they have the funds to carry out this cleanup before anything is even started. The EPA wants to ensure that they'll be able to cover the cost, and they're setting aside that money. EPA will be on site for oversight. They will have an office on site at the waste pits during construction and during the cleanup. And they will have monthly meetings with the responsible parties and the technical working folks. There are safety measures that went above and beyond. And we have not only advocated for, you know, protection of the environment and protection of the communities here upstream and downstream, but also for the workers, and wanting to make sure that the workers here and where this waste goes off-site, that everyone in between is protected from this terrible waste. The post-excavation sampling, they've continued to hold firm on that despite, you know, these massive companies and armies of lawyers pushing back repeatedly and at every turn. The remedial action work plan was also outlined as something that is going to continue to be worked on, and there were very specifics in the order for the timelines and deliverables in the plan. We'll talk more later again about community engagement. Something that was brought up by the National Ocean and Atmospheric, NOAA, what's the second A? Administration? Okay. So NOAA actually was able to get the EPA to require an aquatic resource relocation plan. And we had really focused on protecting the organisms from exposure to this waste and advocating for testing. But NOAA wanted to make sure that when they build that cofferdam, whatever is within that containment gets safely relocated. And that if there are invasive species within that cofferdam, that they're handled appropriately. And so there will be an entire plan and permits that go in specifically to relocating the aquatic life and living beings, creatures within that cofferdam. They will not be allowed to just, you know, throw the fish, throw the plants. They will not be allowed to just throw things over the wall. And then there were also specifics in there for the sand separation area and the requirements for the maintenance plan. So backing up a little bit here, let's go back to the northern impoundment and talk a little bit about these specifics. And before I get into those, we put a lot of text in this PowerPoint for a couple of reasons. And we actually had this meeting scheduled with you all prior to getting notice that last week the EPA was going to come here and have a community advisory committee meeting. And so a group of stakeholders got together last week with the EPA. I think that myself and one of our colleagues were the only two non-government people in the room, but we were able to see a presentation from the agency and get all of these details. So I'm going to, be telling y'all a lot of details that you might not see in writing up here, but I'm attempting to address the concerns that you all have shared over the years. And I look forward to also having a productive conversation at the end. But I put this up, we put this here to show you the concept of this double cofferdam wall, and that, the green area is the waste material at that northern site. This is I-10, Service Road and I-10. And so this will be a double cofferdam wall that the width will be 30 feet. And beyond that wall in specific area is going to be pylons that are set there to slow a barge or a loose vessel. Imelda. We all remember Imelda. And there were, I think, 11 or more fugitive, they call them fugitive loose barges on the river. One struck the waste pit, beached on the waste pit after it struck it. Several struck the interstate. It was horrible. And so, concern was raised, well, what if a barge is loose, yet again, and comes full speed for this wall? What happens then? So this wall is built to take the impact of a loaded barge. But in order to slow a vessel, they are putting an extra barrier beyond this wall, so that if a barge were to strike it, it would not be as severe, ideally, as if it had nothing to slow it in its path. The wall is going to be 10 feet above the highest level or it's going to be 10 feet, which is greater than the highest river height ever on record. And then the barge, the bumpers, I'll just call them bumpers for lack of better terms.
Dolphins.
Yeah, kind of. They're gonna be 12 feet. And so they will be about 2 feet higher than that cofferdam wall. The cap will be removed in stages, and about 230,000 cubic yards of contaminated material will be removed in phases. It is estimated to take 7 years by the responsible parties time frame. We'll talk about that more. So again, just pointing out here, we've made it to the remedial action phase, y'all. Many of us got involved way up here. It's been a long time. I'm thankful we're all still here. Those of us that are, of course. So going back to the UAO. The unilateral administrative order was issued, and our team very quickly began reading it, digesting it. Every inch of the Superfund process, we read, we comment on, we brief, we break it down. And we wanted to compare, how it stacked up, not only to the guidelines, to the practice of the agency, but to things that had been commented on. And then we had to figure out our messaging. How are we going to tell the community? How are we going to talk to elected officials and the different stakeholders? And when are we going to talk with all of these people. We wanted to make sure we could get the word out as soon as possible, and actually just over there, we had a press conference with Commissioner Ramsey and Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia right after, the week, within a week of it being released. And at that time, we did not have this update. And at that time, we were still in that 10-day period. The EPA gave the responsible parties 10 days, 10 business days, excluding federal holidays, 10 days to respond and let them know if they were going to comply, if they were not going to comply, or if they wanted a conference. So the responsible parties requested a conference. And they met with the EPA on May 14th. And on May 26th, the EPA received a letter stating that the companies will comply. Now, I'm told that the first response was a bit long and unclear if they were going to comply. So then on the 26th of May, the agency received a one-page, two-paragraph letter saying that they will comply. We're going to frame that. I hope you know. They have been forced every inch of this process, and we can't let up. Because somewhere in these communications, since the UAO was issued, and last week, the responsible parties have already asked for a delay, or an extension. We call them delays. And the EPA said no, they declined it. Yes, so we can't let up. But what happens if they don't comply? Well, the federal order outlines the penalties, and it also outlines and reinforces the EPA's authority under CERCLA, which is the Superfund law. Now, the EPA has all the tools in the tool chest. It's only a matter of if they will use them. And so in the UAO, it reinforces their ability and outlines upwards of $71,000 in penalties per day if they fail to comply. And it also reinforces their authority to take over the site should the parties not do the work or continue the work as the agency has laid out. Yes, I heard something about cost. Yes, and if the EPA takes over, they can go after the companies for 3 times the cost, which is nearly $1 billion, looking at the total estimated price. So what's next? Well, we have a timeline in terms of days. We have a table. I put half of the table up there for y'all to show you the first chunk of it. So within 90 days of May 26th, that letter stating they will comply, within 90 days, they have to secure a contractor and begin drafting the remaining components of the plan. The expectations for those missing and incomplete details, all of that is very well established, what the expectations are from the EPA. So 90 days. So I calculated that, excluding federal holidays and weekends, and that's October 2nd. So by October 2nd, they have to have a contractor onboarded. Now looking here at this first set of deliverables, all before the start of BMP construction right here, line 9. So the start of BMP, that's the best management plan. Yes, practices. Thank you. I'm so glad you're sitting up front to remind me of these terms. So this is the wall. This is the cofferdam, the double sheet pile wall. So before the construction of that begins, all of these items have to take place. There's additional things, such as bulking up the access road. And then once that wall is built, it's going to take 2 or 3 months to completely dewater it. So before you see shovels in the ground, according to this table, those deliverables from above 9 is 389 days. Over a year in terms of days. But on the calendar, when you exclude weekends and federal holidays, that puts us much further than 389 days. So there are components that will be moving, and the EPA has the authority to keep this process moving. But, you know, they did say that there could be certain circumstances where it would not be possible to move if there was an issue with the contractor, with the supply. You know, there are real construction problems and things that can occur during this timeline. So one thing I want us to continue to do is remind the EPA and keep on their radar. Keep this moving. I think I glossed over earlier that this UAO came over 3,000 days after the record of decision. And when it came out, a lot of people were saying, well, yeah, this has already been done. What's the big deal? EPA issued this order for cleanup. That happened in 2017. That's not the case, right? That was saying, here is how we want you to clean it up, which prompted the go figure out how you're going to clean it up. And now this started this is where the actual cleanup and construction takes place. So big difference, terribly long and reasonably long wait period. Between now and when construction starts and when they begin breaking up that temporary cap that's on top of part of that northern pit, quarterly inspections of the cap will continue. So the monitoring that is going on and the assessments of that site won't stop because this work is beginning. There are going to be multiple companies and contractors or firms that are working on the different components of the project. And then what about hurricane season? So I put that on this slide specifically because of the responsible parties stretching out the cleanup to 7 years with saying, you know, they don't plan to work during hurricane season in terms of waste removal unless the EPA makes them. And so I asked the EPA and reminded them verbatim of what the responsible parties have said with regard to this. And I asked them, what authority do they actually have to ensure that it is moving forward through a hurricane season if it's safe? And they said that they do have the authority to keep it moving. They did so at the southern impoundment, at the cleanup there. There were some lessons learned during that cleanup that are being applied here. And so the EPA essentially sends a letter, and the formality is sending a letter and saying, you know, continue working. And as storms are predicted or begin to arise, then preparation starts happening. But all of the plans for the preparation of, you know, a flood, you know, water coming from inland flooding, or if it's storm surge and a hurricane, all of that, all of those plans and preparation will be in place before this construction starts. Yes, Brian?
How does EPA, or what mechanism does it have to ensure that the different contractors, which may be doing different things at the same time, are coordinated and working, you know, in the same direction and not messing with what each one is doing?
Yeah, that's a great question, Brant. So he had asked what's in place essentially for coordination of all of the different contractors. I know that there will be monthly meetings for coordination and updates. I don't have a lot more information than that, Brant, but I will add on to that at the southern waste pit, there was one company that was the project manager and the engineer entity. At the northern pit, they're not allowing that. And so there's going to be a minimum of 3 main contractors. They're requiring a technical assurances and quality control entity. They're requiring the project management entity and then the engineering entity as well. And they all have to be independent of one another. Okay, so for community involvement, the EPA said that they are likely going to host a meeting here in late July or August. And so they're working right now on the details of a community meeting. I do know that the agency has to book their travel 30 days, unless it's an emergency scenario. They have to book their travel 30 days before an event. So we should have a good amount of notice. In the past, they've improved dramatically and have given us, about 4 weeks notice. So we should have enough time to really get the word out to folks. This is whenever it takes place, it is going to be a really important meeting for community members to come to. The EPA hears a variety of views from community members and from stakeholders, and we have to continue to let them know. People live here, just remind them, people live here. You don't just get off and, go down the side road and access the site and see, maybe 2 homes. There's a lot of homes here. People love this river. I could go on about, the importance of where we are. So stay tuned to hear about that. The agency also said that each of the big milestones moving forward, they will likely have a community meeting here. Or maybe Channel View, but they will likely have a community meeting for each of the major milestones. And then they're also planning or intending to have office hours in the community for the public to come and talk to them. So I've seen this done. The only other time I've seen this done is when the EPA got involved at the Union Pacific Railroad site in 5th Ward in Cashmere Gardens. And the project manager from EPA literally has weekly office hours in a room at their community center. And they are there, and they're answering questions, and the community, business owners, whoever can just walk in and ask them any kind of questions. And I was blown away. I was like, why don't we have this? This is amazing. And so a really incredible opportunity to just sit down with them and have some FaceTime, ask your questions, share your concerns, and talk with them about what's going on at the site. So they are working on setting that up to somewhere in the area have regular office hours to be available to talk with people. So preparing for this meeting, I took pages of notes last week with the EPA because I know all the things y'all are concerned about. And so, no, let me back up. I don't know all the things. I know a lot of things that y'all are concerned about. I want you to continue to tell us the things you are concerned about. So preparing for this, I said, well, let's draft a letter for the community to sign at the meeting. And let's ask the EPA to keep the process moving forward, to not allow any delays. Let them know we want this done, we want it done safely, but we want it done 10 years ago, quick. And another thing that I wanted to put in that letter was signage. Sitting there talking with the EPA, I was thinking about this massive wall and what that's going to look like for boaters. And, people fish regularly. On the buoys, in the buoys, around the buoys. That wall's not going to stop them from going right by the wall and fishing. So what better than this 12-foot, 10-foot, these massive structures to put signs to warn people about what it is. And, somebody could try to climb the thing, maybe graffiti it, who knows? Right. Stay away, federal project.
fish advisory warnings, great location for signage. So I asked the EPA, and they said that, I don't remember the exact response, but it was not in the works. They were not planning on doing that. But they do have the authority to require it. So I think we should ask for that. So we didn't write a letter, because whenever our team was meeting and we were talking about the ideas that we had, we didn't want to do a letter without hearing from you. So we want to hear from you tonight, to let us know, what you want to be in that letter. Right.
Should there be, as part of what you just mentioned, a security plan? Because sure as shooting, somebody's gonna try and get inside of it.
Just letting you all know, it's not going to be us. We are not putting anyone up here. No, he said, should there be a security plan? And fair, yes, absolutely. And there is quite a bit of coordination, and there will continue to be coordination. They're looking at, different camera systems, who will have access to those systems. But general security, like you're talking about, I think is something we definitely need to look into.
It's going to be a massive structure.
Yes.
The highest water level is about 18 feet above the ground. You go 10 feet above that, that's 28, 30 feet high, and 30 feet wide. And the backfill required to work. I mean, that's massive. And who's going to climb 30 feet up to climb the old mountain?
Yeah, well, Greenpeace, I don't know.
And on the height of the water.
Yeah, and so but you bring up a great point, that this is going to be a really massive structure. However, the EPA has been coordinating with project managers and teams in the EPA in California who have done a similar cleanup. It was at a creosote site in a river, in an active waterway there, and their cofferdam was much bigger than this one. Yeah, so it's, as we've been saying for countless years, it's been done, right? And so their cofferdam was even much larger than this. And so, yeah, it was really great to hear that they were coordinating and learning from the entity there. Also, the new director of Superfund for Region 6 in the EPA was also at the meeting, and he has worked for Region 4 of EPA and Region 5 of EPA. So he has experience with Superfund in many other parts of the U.S. So that was also very nice, because Region 6 is known as the worst. So, this region of EPA is not, not one of the best, but that's not my opinion. That's what I hear. So that was really reassuring that we've got some really experienced and diverse folks on this. So TxDOT, to another thing that y'all are concerned about, Sarah.
Are there going to be video cameras going?
Yes.
All the time?
There are going to be video cameras, and there are currently video cameras, but they're not sure exactly if they're going to stay with the same system, and then who will have access, and that really is a big swing. Some Superfund sites, there is public access to live stream.
Well, I don't mean that for them to be watching.
Right, yeah. But yeah, so they're definitely working on that and planning for that. Yeah. So for TxDOT, there was Carolyn. Yes.
I have a few questions, but I'll ask this one. Flood gauges, are there going to be near-site, on-site flood gauges? Because when Harvey and other ones, they were upriver, and so they were denying that it was flooding here. So are there going to be some here that will tell them, warn them in advance of it actually already occurring, be here? Then, my other question, sort of related. Are you aware of the draft FEMA mapping meetings that Harris County Flood Control is holding now, and what the difference is between the extreme flood hazard and special flood hazard, which is what our area is designated. Or because when I look at it, it looks like the designation for extreme flood hazard, which is what they have up by Humboldt and Atascocita, is designated, is worse conditions than down here, and I don't understand why, because it's worse, and the dangers are worse down here than up there. So, that's my question.
Thank you. I might get back to some of those. I'll address the first one right now. So with the coordination with TxDOT, both of the agencies are very interested in hyperlocal water levels and water velocity. It was, gosh, probably 2 or more years ago when we put a map up there of all of the different flood gauges that they will be monitoring during this process. And since Harvey, if I'm recalling correct, they did put additional, they as an EPA and the responsible parties did put additional gauges in the area. And they will have a designated person or set of people who will be monitoring the weather day in and day out through the entire cleanup. And part of that is looking at those gauges. So there's a very colorful, very detailed map that we can go back and find. It was in, I think, one of the designs. Abby, if you'll jot down for us to go back and find out the flood gauges, and then we can see exactly where they are. So with TxDOT, there was a TxDOT representative there. We were really glad to have her there. She is the team member in TxDOT who's working on the environmental assessment, a very normal part of work that TxDOT does. And it's for the Interstate 10 bridge replacement. And that is ongoing right now. They are planning to have a public hearing in 2027. The letting date for the bridge replacement is 2029, and they have it on their fiscal year budget 2030. So as of now, intending for the actual construction of the bridge replacement to take place in 2030. The EPA and TxDOT have coordination that is ongoing and talking often about how are we going to make all of this work in these overlapping timelines. One of the components that folks have been concerned about are all the pipelines that run under the river. And TxDOT brought up that they have been working with utilities and companies as part of the bridge replacement. And some of those pipelines the rerouting of some of them has already started taking place. Some of them are way deeper than an area of concern, but they are actually moving some of the utilities and pipelines that go under that river. And that's part of the TxDOT effort. They're going to be going much, much deeper for the bridge structures than the waste pits cleanup will be. One thing that also came up during the meeting was Port of Houston Authority was at the meeting, and they, along with Coast Guard, will be involved in managing the navigable waterway. And the vessel traffic going under the interstate is going to be altered slightly, in a sense that the directional travel will be altered slightly, but they will also have further back waiting periods. You know, right now, those of you that live on the river that watch this happen, they have to stop at a certain point while, you know, the person who's permitted to go under goes under. And so that's going to be, the distance from the vessel to the bridge is going to be increased. So on both sides, north and south on the river, they will have to wait further back. in part an effort to decrease the risk of accidents with all of the different interactions going on right there. Robert, the remedial project manager for EPA, explained the bridge replacement very simply in a way that I had never heard before, so I wanted to share with you all. By no means do I have all the technical knowledge about this bridge, but the way that they're looking at doing this is, these are the different components and phases of this bridge replacement. It's a massive multi-phase process. And so going over the interstate, and right here where there's the southern impoundment, here's the northern impoundment, we're up here, they're going to first build this part. And then when they build that part, they're going to shut down the traffic going in that direction. And they're going to do it in like a layered phased approach, creeping towards that northern waste pit. So the very last part of that bridge crossing the river to be built is going to be on the north side. So perhaps it will be done.
Did you see on that previous slide anything about the Corps of Engineers and what their role and responsibility is in the situation? Is that explained?
No. Good point, Rick. He said that he did not see anything about the Army Corps of Engineers and their role. I know that the Army Corps of Engineers is involved when it comes to institutional controls. That wasn't discussed at the meeting, but it's been prior conversations. No, that's a really great point, though.
Well, it's permitting too, because, that's an navigable water, and so if they're gonna punch holes and put in new piers and everything, then it seems to me they're gonna need a permit.
Yeah, did you?
I thought that the port, there was a man there from the Port of Houston, and I think that he may have been their ears for some of that,
Okay.
so that they didn't feel like they had to have them also there.
Okay. Yeah, that's a really great point. And, it would be nice if when the EPA has a meeting, if we had all of the different entities involved at the meeting. And we've pushed for that before. It's not happened. But it sure would be nice. So, we have had a lot of elected officials, a lot of agencies involved in this over the years. And so I just wanted to again take a moment to make sure that we recognize many, and not all, but many of the elected officials who have supported this. Everyone up here has written numerous letters to the EPA regarding the cleanup of that site, the protection of the local community. A couple of them, you might go, I've never heard from them. A couple of them, were more vocal after the cancer assessment was completed. And every entity in every agency in Harris County has really rallied around getting this site cleaned up for many years. Several resolutions have gone through Commissioner's Court. As recent as, I believe in the last year, the county judge and all the commissioners were in agreement and again signed a letter and a declaration for removal. Pollution Control Services, the county attorney's office. I think we're now on our third county attorney since I've been involved in this. We've been here for a lot of turnover in these positions, and time again, our communities, we have done a good job of securing bipartisan support for the cleanup of this site and making sure that it stayed on everyone's radar, the communities, but also our elected officials. So thank you to the offices who have been in this with us, and of course thank you to our community members. So I put up here the new information for the alternate remedial project manager at the EPA. So the contact details here and at these QR codes is for us, for the THEA folks. You can scan this QR code, which is also the QR code on your agenda, for any of our contact details, and then this one is the health survey that we continue to host. But up here, it are the details for Robert. He is the project manager for the cleanup of the northern waste pit, and then the alternate contact, should you not be able to reach him or have a specific question related to the southern impoundment. This is a new name for us, Chandani. So a new contact now. Carolyn, let's get back to your questions. Okay, so she mentioned the Harris County meetings that they're having with the new FEMA flood maps. Yes, I've heard of them. I wish I would have included the info. If you've not heard of them, it's Harris County Flood Control, I think, that is doing a series of online meetings. The information, I would assume, is on their website. It's definitely on their social media. If you're on their email list, you've got notices about it. Going over the changes with the maps. But to speak specifically to the difference, I am not aware of the differences.
I'm just concerned that they're not realizing the dangers that exist here. And they're saying up north is a more dangerous area. My opinion being because it's a wealthier area and more housing is there. So maybe they had more reports of it there, but we had such extensive damage here and conditions we have. And I understand, special hazard floodway, they're acknowledging that we have special hazards here. But it seemed to me, if you look at their legend and judge by colors, that extreme is a bit worse than special hazard. And I can see a lot of things a lot worse that could happen here than would happen up north. Not saying that people losing their houses and all that stuff, but the things that can happen here during a flood is much, much worse than what could happen there.
Well, I respect your opinion, but I don't agree. Okay, maybe more toxic, maybe. Okay, but there are, very extreme flooding scenarios that have taken place all along the river.
Which I agree.
So, I have a friend who lives in Kingwood and, not necessarily a wealthy area. Humble, there's, some not wealthy areas over there. Actually, many.
Well, I know many that aren't either, but.
Yeah, but so, I don't know that there's a difference in demographics, a very big difference. But, a friend in Kingwood, the water, I forget what storm it was, and they don't even live by the water, but it was up to her fridge. So, they've had really severe things for sure. Yes?
I was in the meeting, so I saw the presentation, and so what they're being dismissive of, I don't care if it's focused on demographics, whether you have people that live on I-10 or not, the water goes across I-10, and for them to be kind of dismissive of that impact, the flood,
y'all feel they're being dismissive.
The changes that they're talking about are kind of localized to the impact to people. And so yes, the housing and whatever, there's just a lot more housing, but you can't be less concerned and not try to mitigate what goes across I-10. Water that will go across I-10 impacts millions, okay? I'm not saying that the other people aren't impacted in the demographics and the people in the housing and whatever. Yes, that has a very strong role. But they're not focusing and doing enough about talking about the impact of what happens when the water goes across I-10. And that's a major concern. And then it will impact, when they look at that water,
And
What you're
she's
So,
doing a much better
do you-
explaining than I.
Yeah, this is a different story, Carolyn. Okay, so do you feel they are not doing a good job? They as in FEMA or Harris County?
Whoever's putting it together.
Yeah.
I think
Whoever's working with the maps.
Okay,
they're working together. Yeah, they're
Okay.
working together. And
Okay.
so, and the other piece to it is, maybe they are doing, if they're in the meetings that they're having, are very much geared toward the public in terms of housing and insurance and all of those things, which are huge factors. I'm not dismissing that importance. I'm just being loud about the importance of looking at this harder and the impact of what the flooding does here, not just for housing, but for the whole economy.
sure, yeah. Yes, Brett?
Maybe the next time you present, you might be able to get info from TxDOT, because they're concerned about the water going over the bridge. You know, TxDOT is raising part of the I-10 now over by White Oak Bio because it gets flooded, right? So I'm just wondering how much it's gonna change with the new bridge, the new whole segment on the east side, as far as height and how it would be interesting to see, you know, some information on that. And
Yeah.
the other thing is 1994, we had the horrible pipelines break and the,
Yeah.
the burns and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, that also is something, in my opinion, that Harris County or FEMA, whoever, needs to also sort of like take into account utilities. right?
Sure.
And that,
Around here, utilities usually means
and that's what I meant, is that the dangers posed by the flooding to the interstate, to the movement of the barges, and to all this industry that is compiling down here. That they're ignoring what can happen when you flood, when you shove barges of chemicals through a narrow space or up onto land, or you flood all the chemical plants, and that should be on the radar because of what happened in Crosby with Arkema and the floodwaters and the extreme explosion risk that it caused.
Yeah,
So
I heard, I
I'm just,
understand.
you know.
Yeah, no, I understand. So I know that there was this big controversy on, I think the west side of the East Fork recently with the development. And I was a little surprised at all who rallied together opposing the development. It was a very conservative rally and numerous conservative elected officials opposing this development. And the basis was flooding. And so when I'm hearing these things from you, I can't help but think of call your elected officials.
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't have the power to do anything about this, right? Like, I hear you. I think this is important. We should be talking about this. But if you care about this, if you feel that they are being dismissive, call your elected officials, because that's a part of who these entities need to be hearing from, in addition to the residents.
Well, and we need to participate in those meetings and state the concerns about us, because I do think that they're not realizing, just being dismissive of the consequences through here, and if they're saying the dangers and the flooding that touchworks up there, they haven't been down here, they haven't been paying attention to the news reports and stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, ma'am.
I am April. I have several questions, but
Okay.
I'm just going to be brief. So, are we going to have some type of signage to let the, all of us know what's going on when that happens? What are there gonna be precautions to take? Stay in your houses, don't drink this, you know what I'm saying? Because a lot of people here are not here tonight because they have no idea this is going on.
Yeah.
A lot of times, the people in position, they have these secretly things going on that they don't tell us about, we don't know. But the question I would like to ask them, and I'm probably gonna send something out to them, would be, who lives in this area that are making the actual decisions for us? Who lives in this area? And I'm sure none of them do. They live over there in Houston. So that I have an idea, a clue, that people are constantly dying. Every Saturday in Barrett Station in Crosley, I am going to a funeral. And how did they die? Cancer, high blood pressure, all of the stuff that's on this paper here. And it's like, what are we gonna do? Are we gonna let the people know? Because people don't know this is going on. They have no clue and why they're dying.
Thank you.
So I think if it be a signage saying that this project is going on, don't do this. You know, the air that you breathe, don't drink this. They don't know.
Yeah. So we all need to continue talking about this. If everyone here goes and tells 5 people, right, we all need to be sharing the message and sharing the information. So we are part of that, but there are, of course, agencies and entities that have responsibilities, right? We are a nonprofit, we are community members, right? So the burden should not just be on the people. And so to directly speak to air, water, concerns like that during construction of the removal of that northern waste pit, in theory, it will be fully contained. It is not a site that has volatile chemicals, so it does not have chemicals essentially that will vaporize and go up into the air. So like if there was a concern for an exposure scenario in the air, it would be like particulate matter and exhaust from all the construction equipment, which surely, you know, with I-10, I mean, it's just an additional compound of the particulate matter that is going up in the air, right? So that would be a component of a emission for this project versus actual chemicals from the waste that's there, because these chemicals bind to particles and sediment. So it's going to be physically removing that like black, tarry, pulpy waste material out of there. I mean, I remember being a little kid on the northern part of the San Jacinto River and digging in the, you know, the riverbed, and it was just like tar. And I didn't know any better. And I don't know, and I'm not saying it was this, but that's just what I think of when I explain this waste material. So it's going to be a physical removal of that waste material. Now, groundwater is something that it is going to be, the construction is going to be coming in contact with. So they will be pumping the groundwater as it comes in contact with the waste and treating it. And so any water that goes into that cofferdam during the entire construction effort has to be treated. And, you know, whether it fell from the sky, whatever the situation, any water that's in there has to be treated and meet Texas surface water quality standards. And then the waste material is going to be tested before it is hauled off site. Something that's been asked in previous meetings was, where is it going to be while the testing is going on in the lab, and what happens if a flood or a hurricane happens and there's piles of this material? It's all going to be within the cofferdam wall, and there will be procedures in place to move equipment, material, etc. in the event of a hurricane. But
So all the testing will be done on site?
no, there will be certain testing that is done on site, but not the dioxin, PCBs, heavy metal test. That'll be done in the lab.
How long is that turnaround?
So the normal turnaround is 2 weeks. So at certain points, they might do expedited turnarounds where you can get it within about a week. But the standard dioxin turnaround is 2 weeks.
So they dig it up a little bit, go get tested, wait 2 weeks, come back, do a little bit more, come back. That's the routine?
It will be, excuse me, kind of like a continuous turn and burn type of process. You know, they will be moving waste material. It will sit while they wait on the results, get the results, move that material with the manifest, with the documentation of what's in that to the appropriate facility. And the water treatment is going to be one of the most extensive ongoing components of this construction project. So if you are familiar with, I don't think I, hold your eyes, I don't think I have a picture here. Wait, let me go back. That stuff, that's the waste. That's a real photo. I don't think I have a photo here from, yep, there it is. Southern Impoundments. This was a 580,000 gallon tank of treated water that was treated during the construction there at the Southern Impoundment. The tanks for the Northern Impoundment are going to be 1 million gallons. So these are going to be, and if you remember those, they were massive. These are going to be enormous structures. Yes, Frank?
I think the key as far as air quality goes is how they keep the material from being cracked off the site. And so I think to me that's a real focus that ought to be made is like, how are you going to do this so that when you leave and take it to the landfill that, you know, it's going to be disposed of that you're not tracking it on any road or anything you're going to be on. So,
Yeah.
so I don't know how that's to be done. And O&M, operation and maintenance, is really key. And a lot of times people, because this could last 7 years, right? So a lot of times people get complacent unless every day they're focused on doing it, and that's to me going to be one of the biggest problems. How do you
Sure. Yeah.
take care of that?
Yeah. Great points, Grant. So he mentioned safety measures, paraphrasing here, to ensure the stuff is not trapped off-site. We were successful in getting them to require a truck washing station. And so there is an entire plan for the off-site disposal, and a component of that is the truck washing. So every piece of equipment, every vehicle, everything that leaves the site will get washed before it leaves that cofferdam. They will build a road over the cofferdam and into it. And so before they go out and get on that feeder, they're going to be going through a truck wash. And then, you know, some of these details are going to be further refined once the contractor is brought on. But what they were looking at doing was doing roll-off containers that are lined with a plastic material. So in theory, it is, you know, not going to be on the container once it gets disposed. The liner and everything would go with. So those are two of the safety measures that are relevant that we've seen.
Well, you know, you also have to take into account that if something breaks down
No,
and you do track it out, you know, what the response is going to be, you know.
Yeah, and one of the concerns, you know, that some of our residents have consistently raised is the signage on the truck. Because if this stuff is hauled off as non-hazardous, there's not a whole lot of labeling that would be on there. So it's definitely something to continue paying attention to. Yes, Teresa, sorry, Carolyn's had her hand.
My concern is that I have noticed by looking through HCAT records that the responsible parties, I believe it was McGinnis, has purchased a lot of the properties in the Sanderson and River Estate. So along the feeder I-10 and feeder along there, purchased that. And I have to wonder, are they intending on using those properties to store the waste while it's waiting on analysis for transport there? And my concern is that is an extreme risk flood area.
No, it definitely won't be stored there.
So that I still, why are they purchasing all that property?
I don't know, and Teresa reminded me of that earlier, and at first I was like, what? And then I went, wait, no, I do know that, and I wish I would have remembered that in the EPA meeting. Land and staging areas did come up in the meeting, but EPA could not specify where staging areas were. Now, it's not for the waste, it's for like sheet piling, it's for steel, it's for rock, it's for tarps, all those things, not the waste. The waste will be either within that cofferdam or on a truck leaving that site. But they said that all that the EPA was willing to say was that they are in ongoing, the responsible parties are in ongoing negotiations. And so the EPA was not allowed to talk about it while it was ongoing.
So there'll be a storage area within the cofferdam.
Oh, yes.
Waste storage.
Yes, and that's what happened as well with the southern site, within the construction footprint, within a contained area. The waste was stored while they were waiting for the results. Yes, Teresa?
Have they found do they know where they're going to take this area?
They have not identified that. There are places that they have looked at. Waste management is one of the responsible parties, so we'll see if they pull a rabbit out of their hat, but we shall see. We don't know if it will be where the waste went previously or not, and it kind of depends on capacity of these different facilities, when it is actual time where the waste is being moved, and then also the classification of the waste. And April, I think you said you had a couple of questions.
Oh,
No? Okay. Sorry, I was just like, I want to make sure I get back to you.
Well, institutional controls.
Yes.
They keep saying they're going to put them in place, but they've never been put in place. And in the meantime, all of this large marine industry has occurred, and we know it will never be removed. Once it's there, it stays there. So when will the institutional controls ever be put in place?
Well, I talked to Greg earlier, and I was like, Greg, I don't have good news for you on this one. Jackie, do not know and have no power over that. But we have to keep pushing for these to get in place, right? They are important, they are protective, they are intended for something very specific. But talking with folks in recent months from different sites, I've heard that is one of the longest parts of this process. And some people were saying, don't expect it in under a decade. And so I just want to share that so that we have reasonable expectations, because the southern site, they're still waiting, right? Construction's been done for a couple of years.
They will be.
And there's still no institutional controls in place. So I don't have a timeline or an answer for you, but we need to keep that on the radar.
Do we need to push for those to be put in place as soon as possible, so that we can minimize what is occurring? Because once it's there, the institutional, it doesn't matter what they put in, because it will be ineffective. It will be they won't be able to enforce it because it's already past the opportune time to stop it.
Yeah, understood. Yeah, I know, and, you know, I know that it gets old, you know? It gets old just seeing these things be done. I remember, you know, seeing things, you know, whenever I lived here. And luckily there's the fire departments, you know, that'll come out, or pollution control, and it gets old. You know, it's just one thing after the next, or you're not seeing these things put in place that should be there. And, you know, these are broken systems, and we have to push, you know, to make them work. So yeah, we definitely have to keep it on the radar. Did I see a hand over here? No? Teresa?
I say this every chance I get. The people that show in your work, in your group, in what you do, and what you've done to keep this in the forefront has been amazing. And so in doing that and keeping and coming and having these dialogues with whatever, and you representing that, that's why this is here now, and that's why this is so important.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, you know, it is deeply personal for me, and you know, I'm a woman of faith, and I believe, you know, when I was suffering so bad, not that I'm not now, but it's a different suffering than I endure now. And back then, you know, 15 plus years ago, I would just be like, why me? You know, why me? And I believe, you know, it was put in my path, and we have the capacity to do something about this, and we've seen that we can. And it's hard, yeah, it is long, but, you know, we need all of us, you know, so. What?
The Jackie Metcalf Memorial former waste pit site.
No, I want it to be like Hannah Harpster, you know, I mean, the kids, that's what, you know, that's what gets me is the kids, you know, back when I used to have seizures, and I'd meet kids that were having seizures, and I knew how, as a 20-something-year-old, how hard it was, and the kids that were going through that, I was like, it's just not right. All of the suffering is just not right, so.
I know we need a wall, like, you know, the veterans wall, have the waste pit walls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, art and environmental movements has really become a big thing in recent years, and I've seen some incredible stuff. I mean, we were in San Antonio, myself and some of our team members, for River Rally, this national conference, and you know, being down on the Riverwalk and seeing some of the art there was inspiring, and really, you know, made me think about what could be on the river, you know, because there are people who over the years, some of them are no longer with us. You know, we have our memory board here with a few of them, you know, who have said, like, wouldn't it be nice to have some sort of memorial, more than just a bench, you know, and you know, something that in 20 years, in 50 years, whenever, that everything that was done here and endured here isn't forgotten. So, all right, thank you all. I appreciate you. Have a good night. Oh, yes, Sarah, thank you. Sorry. I take it back. 2 more announcements. 1, be sure to check out the treats in the back. They're incredible. I don't know if they're all sugar-free. Are they all sugar-free? They are all sugar-free. Okay, incredible, delicious. My entire family is obsessed with them. And if you shop at Kroger, grab one of these. We enrolled in their nonprofit give back program, and it costs you nothing. And all you have to do is attach your Kroger card to our ID information, and we will receive donations from that based upon how many people enroll with our details and how much those people shop. Thank you. All right, have a good night, y'all.
How are you?